we have our, we have our claim, or the end results of sickness. There is a healing promise to claim that we can claim tonight. While we on our lesson for tonight, I would encourage each and every one, all of us that can, just share our Facebook page if we're going live on Facebook. Otherwise, the recording will be put onto YouTube. Share the YouTube link, let people know about it, and let them also benefit from our lesson every week. So let us hear what the Bible says, or what we can have our healing promise for tonight. It is found in Jeremiah 29:11, and we know it all very well. Jeremiah 29 verse 11, it says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." Very interesting. So when we talk about the end results of sickness, there are only two possible end results of sickness. We can only count two, and we are going to deal with both of them. It will either be for the glory of God, or it can be a sickness unto death. That's the two we're going to deal with tonight. Two possible end results of a sickness, any disease. It can either be for the glory of God, or it can be a sickness unto death. In either case, beloved, as we have already have our promise, our healing promise that we claimed, in either case, God promises, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end," in Jeremiah 29:11. Now, when we talk about a sickness for the glory of God, it is a sickness, is a sickness where a person glorifies God through their testimony, through their life, and through their ministry. Now, we can go ahead, and in John chapter 9, we can read the story of a man that was blind since birth. We know that story. We can read it again just to refresh. It is in John chapter 9. Now, Jesus said of this blind man, John chapter 9, verse 3, "Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him." So when the blind man was healed, beloved, we know how it happened. God received glory through his testimony. So the blind man's testimony gave God glory. God should always receive the glory for all legitimate healing. Now, yes, Bishop, you say legitimate. What do you mean by it? Okay, by legitimate, we mean healings that are not satanically invoked. So we cannot say that the blind man's sickness or his blindness was satanically invoked. He was blind from birth, since birth. So we can say that that was a legitimate healing. God should always receive the glory. So whenever we get healed from any form of sickness or disease, God should always get the glory. So we must remember that, and we must do it just like that, and give God the glory through our testimony, through the life that we live, and through our ministry that we have in life. Now, let us look at natural healing. So we're still dealing with the sickness to the glory of God now. We're doing the natural healing. God is usually given credit for divine healing. Yes, we know that. But glory should also be given to God for what is called natural healing of the body through its own processes. We know that God created the body and displays his nature and creative power through the natural bodily processes. I mean, at this stage, I can say that still now, man is still through science trying to fathom how God did it, how God created the body. they understand most of it, but not everything. So God created the body, and through the body he displays his nature and creative power through the natural bodily processes. And that is the processes of healing. If I scratch myself, how it heals, and it heals and comes right and comes perfect again, no pain, no nothing, no irritation. That is the natural bodily processes. Then we have medical healing. Now, we should also thank God for healing assisted by medical means. I always say that we should not be irresponsible and say, I am healed, I'm not going to take this medicine anymore. No. The Bible says every good gift comes from God, according to James 1, verse 17. Every good gift comes from God. And this includes medicines, vitamins, and other substances that benefit you physically. So whatever is a benefit to us physically. That is a good gift that comes from God. We should see it as a good gift that comes from God because it enhances. And it is a substance that helps the healing process in our bodies. Now, many medicines come from natural substances in plants and elements that were created by God in the first place. So they create these medicines. They create it through natural plants, natural substances like plants, and any elements that were created by God in the first place. So God has created it to be good. And now if they're using it for the good and for the benefit of the physical body, then every good gift comes from God, according to James 1, verse 17. Now, sometimes a person is healed instantaneously, but other times healing is delayed and the person is healed later or gradually. We know about this. Many of us are looking for that instantaneous healing. Many of us want somebody to speak over our lives and whoop, we want to be healed. Many of us want somebody to pray over us and whoop, we are healed. But not all healing are instantaneously. There is a process to healing as well. We should follow that process. Now the healing is delayed. Now my wife usually says it's delayed but not denied. And so the healing takes place gradually, or it takes place at a later stage.
In the right place, please.
So let us consider these examples. Let us can we just all get ourselves muted there, please? Can we get ourselves, Sister Ayanda? Can we get ourselves muted, please? Thank you, ma'am. Let us consider these examples. Let us consider these examples. Zechariah was not healed until the birth of John in Luke chapter 1, verse 20. So it didn't mean that he came out, he got the vision, and when somebody spoke life or somebody did something, he was healed. No, he was only healed until the birth of John. When John was birthed, that day he got healed. Let's look at Hannah in 1 Samuel 1 from verse 5 to 19. Hannah could not bear a child until God's perfect timing. So we should always rely on God's perfect timing. Right? So she could not bear a child until it was the right time that God allowed it to happen. Despite Abram's faith, Abram and Sarah could not bear a child until God's timing. So what does it say? It says that there was nothing wrong, but it was only that it was God's timing. There was nothing wrong with Hannah bearing a child. There was nothing wrong with Sarah bearing a child, but it was God's timing. There was nothing wrong with Zechariah, and he was only healed at the birth of John. So there is this thing that we need to understand. Everything cannot be instantaneous. Everything is also not delayed. It is all about the decision that comes from God. It's all about God's timing. So, beloved, whether instantaneous or gradual or delayed, God should always receive glory for any form of healing. We must thank God for the healing of the soul, of the physical healing, of all the healing that we receive through our medical healing. We must thank God. God should get the glory all the time and at all times. Beloved, the second one that we need to look at, we were looking now at the sickness for the glory of God. And now we look at the sickness unto death. That's the two that we said we were going to look at, and now we're looking at the second one quickly. In John chapter 11, verse 4, Jesus said, the sickness of Lazarus was not one unto death. What does this mean? This actually means there is a sickness unto death. Because the one for Lazarus is not a sickness unto death, but that implies that there is sickness unto death. So the goal that we have here now, the goal of healing is not immortality. Divine healing does not achieve this in any more than medicine does. So if we get divine healing, we can also, through the natural substances that they use for medicine, we can then also get healing through medicine. It can then also be applied. Even those raised from the dead by Jesus eventually died. So it is not that they are now immortal. Even Lazarus died after Jesus has raised him from the dead. After Jesus has said that his sickness was not unto death. Eventually he passed. So that healing or divine healing or the goal of the healing is not immortality. We will die even after being raised. So there are two types of death mentioned in the Bible. A premature death occurs when a person is turned over to the destruction of the flesh and dies prematurely so that the spirit might be saved. According to 1 Corinthians 5, verse 4 to 5. We looked at it in chapter 5. We looked at all these things in chapter 5. So, a premature death occurs when a person is turned over to the destruction of the flesh and dies prematurely so that the spirit might be saved. The second type of death mentioned in the Bible is an appointed death. Now, to bring understanding, premature is when you are turned over to the destruction of the flesh, when you are left to do what you want to and how you want to and who do you want to serve. You go to the devil, you serve the devil, and then you die prematurely in order for your spirit, your soul to be saved. But now the appointed death. Every man has an appointed time to die, according to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 2 and Ecclesiastes 3, verse 2. Even Elisha, the great prophet of God, who did many miracles of healing, became sick with the sickness whereof ye would die. Interesting. The great man of God wasn't immortal. He became sick. So sickness is not for a selected few. Sickness is for everyone. But then we find that sickness unto death, the first one is the premature death. The second one is the appointed death. And we can read about Elisha's sickness in 2 Kings 13, verse 14. Now, beloved, you and I need to understand that our appointed time to die, it is possible to just stop breathing rather than get sick and die. You can just stop breathing. We hear of people dying in their sleep. So I suppose they went to sleep and they stopped breathing. So in Psalms 104, verse 29, as a reference, we read and it says, thou takest away their breath. They die and return to their dust. So this body returns to the dust. and the soul lives. So he taketh away their breath. So which means you just stop breathing. Instead of getting sick, having a long sick bed and going through traumatic experiences, you just stop breathing. That is, unfortunately, if it is your time. Okay? As an old man, Moses had no effects of age. Joshua was old and well stricken in age. God preserved the one supernaturally while the other experienced the results of natural aging. Did we hear that? As an old man, Moses had no effects of age. Moses was strong and could do what he could do when he was young. But Joshua became old and was well stricken in age. So which means he aged. And God preserved the one supernaturally while the other experienced the result of natural aging. So this, however, this aging process had nothing to do with spirituality. It's got nothing to do with the aging process. Both of them were great spiritual leaders. And we have witnessed, we've got the Bible that we have referenced. And so they were both great spiritual leaders. God will sustain us, beloved, whether our body experiences the natural process of age and death by disease, or we are supernaturally preserved. God will sustain us, regardless of which process is followed. Process of natural age, death by disease, or we are supernaturally preserved. That is God's sustenance for us. We often make the mistake of living bound by the parameters of time instead of eternity. Bishop is talking deep things tonight. We often make the mistake of living bound by the parameters of time instead of eternity. I say we make the mistake in saying, I may not reach the age of 80. I don't think I will reach 65. We live and we make the mistake of putting our lifespan within a certain time frame. We should put it in God's hands so that God can decide eternity for us. So as a believer, you and I are already living in eternal life, whether we live it on this or the other side of death. So when we live in eternity, we live with God, we live in God, and whether it is this side or the other side of death, we will live in eternity. We will not die. Now listen to this. When a believer dies, it is the ultimate healing within the parameters of eternity. Flesh cannot enter there. But when we as believers die, that is the complete healing that makes us complete within the parameters of eternity. Let us remember the following. We will experience healing. For some, it will be experienced this side of death. God will raise you up and you will glorify him by your testimony, by your life, and by your ministry. That is your healing this side of death. But when we die, there's the healing that side of death. Others will receive the ultimate healing as they pass through the death and victoriously enter the presence of the Lord with a body, soul, and spirit that are perfectly whole. It's like Jesus when he was resurrected. There was a body, there was a soul, there was a spirit. He was perfectly whole. That is how we will be when we pass through death. That is our supreme healing. And that is how we will overcome this burden of death, this sickness. And that, beloved, is the end result of sickness. We can recap quickly. It is really a quick chapter, this one. We can recap quickly. We can recap. We said in the beginning that there's two possible end results of sickness. There is two possibilities, and we can look at these possibilities. It is the one is a sickness for the glory of God, and the other one is the sickness unto death. And when we talk about the glory of the Lord, it is not only the sicknesses that are, like we say, legitimate healing. It is not those sicknesses only. It is also the natural healing. It is the medical healing that we know that the medicine are made of the natural substances in plants and other elements that were created by God in the first place. That's why we can say that every good gift comes from God. So if we look at medicine in that way, then we see it as a gift from God to benefit our physical bodies. Then we dealt with instantaneous and delayed healings. We mentioned Zechariah, Hannah, and also Abram and Sarah. So it can either be delayed or it can be instantaneous. And our sickness unto death, beloved, we need to understand that not all sickness are unto death, but there are sickness that are unto death. When we die, we can just stop breathing. We don't need a sick bed or a disease or anything. When we die, we just can stop breathing. The greatest thing, however, is that we will all experience healing. For some, the healing will happen this side of death. You will be healed and then you die. But for others, the healing comes through the death process. As we pass through death and we victoriously enter the presence of the Lord with a body, soul, and spirit that are perfectly whole. And that is our lesson for tonight. Short and sweet, to the point, but it gives us enough time now to discuss it, to speak about it, to ask questions, to make comments, or just say something about it. And I love this because that means I am not going to talk all by myself. I will have some help. People will ask questions, and there will be some other people that will help me answer these questions. So, beloved, if there's anything, that is our lesson for tonight, chapter 7, the end result of sickness. And this is what we dealt with, the two results and the different sickness and what goes on around that. Is there any questions or any comments that you want to make? You can unmute yourself and you can make your comment or ask the question that you want to ask about tonight's lesson. Anybody, beloved, you're welcome. Anybody, beloved?
Good evening.
Good evening, Mom.
Good evening.